I know there's a lot of conversations about artificial intelligence and the ability to automate the work that a bookkeeper would do. But what you cannot automate is how do you help someone understand what they're looking at and being able to have that dialogue. That's why I truly believe in our profession. We don't have enough people of color in the industry. I think it's less than 1% of all certified public accountants are African American. That is sad. I believe there is enough money to go around for all of us. I don't fight over clients. I don't compete or bid or try and underbid someone. I'm always willing to share.
Oh, man, I'm super excited for this episode of JWP podcast. We're talking to Erick Bell. Erick Bell is a financial wellness professor, a CPA, and also an author. Without much ado, Erick, welcome to the platform. Welcome to JWP.
Oh, thank you, man. My mom's gonna be proud. Thank you so much.
Man, I'm actually very proud that you accepted to be on JWP podcast, because backstory to how I met you in the first place, I had the opportunity to come to a networking dinner for Bloomberg, and during the networking dinner, you were the keynote speaker, and your speech was so moving. I quite remember the title of your speech was Young, Gifted, and Black.
Yeah.
And man, I listened to that speech and I was like, Erick, you're well-spoken. I was like, all right, I got to find a way to talk to you and get you onto the platform. But that night was so busy, I didn't get to see you after your speech. And so I reached out to one of your students, and she was kind enough to give me your email, and I reached out and you also accepted. And so thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for people who don't know you, you're a professor, you're a tenured professor, and you've been doing this for a while. You're a huge accounting figure. You're known for a lot of work you've done around accounting. And not only that, now you're a published author. The title of your book is Living Healthy, and the 6 strategies you talk about, we're going to dive into that on this episode today. But I'm so humbled to have you on this episode. And so for anyone that's listening right now who doesn't know who Erick Bell is, I've done my best to try to introduce you. Could you tell them a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, you've covered a lot of it. I am a professor. That's my profession. And I was working in the industry, the accounting industry. I kind of built my bones doing accounting, and being in that industry just changed the trajectory of my life. And so I am forever indebted to the field and the career of accounting, and to all those different mentors that have spoken into my life over the years. But I love what I do now, and I'm a teacher. I'm someone who's there to inspire, to encourage students just to be great. Identify a goal, grasp onto that goal with all your might, and just pursue it. And when your goal changes, that's okay as well. I'm also a father. I have 4 amazing children. I'm going to call their names out. My princess, Kasani, and my 3 princes, Makai, Lucas, and Ben. I'm also a husband, my lovely wife, Lauren, who supports me and lets me be out when I'm supposed to be home. She supports me in all that I do. And I'm a big believer in giving back. So I'm the chairman of the board for a nonprofit organization that's focused on how do we get more people of color into the field of accounting, pursuing that as a career. I'm also a minister and a musician as well. And I also love basketball. I'm a better coach than I am a player. And I'm a better referee than I am a player. But I love basketball.
Lovely. A lot to unpack there. But I want to say hi to the family if they're watching. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you for giving us Erick to be on our platform today. We're very lucky to have him. So we feel very fortunate there. A lot to unpack there. I want to start with the accounting industry in general. And so I know one of the things that inspires you is breaking barriers. It's something that you talk about in your book. You found a lot of different strategies to be able to break these barriers. Accounting, when I think about business, is almost like the frame of the business, right? Without accounting, the business probably would not stand. You need great accounting to have a great business.
Absolutely.
And so when I think about building wealth also, I think one of the best ways to build wealth without a limit, at least, is starting your own business.
Yes.
And so for someone that's listening right now that doesn't have a brighter idea about accounting, or for someone that's looking to start a business, what should they know about accounting, and what's also the current state of the accounting industry?
Sure. Yeah. So accounting is the language of business. And so every business, that's what I love about this profession. Every business is going to need to have an accountant, whether you are in entertainment, whether you're in the restaurant business, you're in the healthcare business, education, regardless, right? You're going to have an accounting function. And those financial statements are critical. And that's the role that we as accountants play, is helping to organize that information, put it into a consistent format so that it can be used to secure equity, to get investors, also to get debt. If you want to build your company through debt so that you retain the ownership in your organization, everyone's going to be asking for the financial statements, the income statement or profit and loss, how much money are you making? And they're also going to be asking about your balance sheet, what's your financial position? And so the role that I play with my with my clients, I also forgot to mention I have my own accounting firm as well. The role I play with my clients is helping them not only prepare the information, but interpret it. What does it mean? If we talk about accounting being a language, well, someone has to interpret that language. And that's where our role is critical in doing that. It's such a stable profession. When the economy is doing well, they're hiring accountants. When the economy is doing bad, they need accountants to figure out who are they going to lay off. And of course, the accountants are going to be like, well, lay us off last.
Right.
But they're going to be looking at, we're always going to be in need in a good or bad economy. The state of the profession is struggling. I know there's a lot of conversations about artificial intelligence and the ability to automate a lot of the work that a bookkeeper would do. But what you cannot automate is how do you help someone understand what they're looking at and being able to have that dialogue. And so that's why I truly believe in our profession. As a certified public accountant, we are business advisors. There will always be a need for us. Artificial intelligence is not new to our industry. We've been sending work overseas for the last 15 years. So the typical work that you're going to learn how accounting works in your basic or introduction to accounting class, that work's either being done by computers or someone that's working overseas. But the value that we bring in interpreting that data, the value that we bring in being a trusted business advisor, that's not going to go away. The challenge is we don't have enough people of color in the industry. Across CPAs, I think it's less than 1% of all certified public accountants are African American. And that is sad because it is a profession where you can either work for someone and have success, or you can branch out and have your own business and have success. And like you said, that's how we begin to build wealth. Unlimited wealth is having the ability to have our own business. And so there are barriers that you have to go through to get the CPA license. But I think that just speaks to the person that you're hiring is someone that is consistent, someone that knows how to start and finish, and someone that has kind of stood the test of time in order to get to that point to earn that CPA license.
Yeah. Someone that's consistent, someone that can start and finish. Those are some things you talk about in your book, but we're going to dive into the book in a minute. you do have your own firm, and so you being a person of color, having your own firm and seeing the opportunities that there is in the accounting industry, how does that inspire you for the future of this industry?
Having my own firm, how does it inspire me?
Yeah.
Um, I I don't know if it inspires me. I think what I enjoy about it is I'm able to give opportunities to others. I'll just tell you, I hit a point in my life where it stopped being about me, and the things that I do now, it's how can I enhance the life of someone else. And so for me, it's about ownership. If I own my own company, I get to decide who I hire, and I can take risks on people that other people aren't willing to take risks on, and bring them on and say, I'm going to make sure you get all the necessary information that you need. And accounting that's my skill set. And so that it's logical for me to start a business in accounting. And so to me, it's the ability to be able to help bring other people along on this journey. And I have several people that work with me. And my goal, I tell them all the time, my goal is to help you start your own business. Because I believe, man, there is enough money to go around for all of us. I don't fight over clients. I don't compete or bid or try and underbid someone. There's enough money in this world to go around for everybody. So I'm always willing to share.
That's awesome, especially when I think of if you're trying to build wealth. I don't think you can build it with a scarcity mindset. You kind of need that abundance mindset in order to be able to attain that wealth that we're trying to build.
Absolutely.
All right. That's pretty good. So I think let's dive into financial wellness. So financial wellness is something that you're passionate about. You talk about it in your book in so many different ways, from so many different aspects, whether you're talking about it from a spiritual standpoint or the actual financial standpoint. So personally, what does financial wellness mean to you?
So there's three important tenets of our life. Physical, right? The ability to get up and down stairs, to be able to walk, to be able to pick your kids up. You want to be physically well. Spiritually, I believe it's critical that you have a spiritual connection, understanding that this world is bigger than just me, and the things that I do will impact other people. And financial. I think financial is also important because that is what we deal with on a daily basis, the money. And so when I talk about financial wellness, it's being comfortable with money, being able to have that money conversation. A lot of times when we start talking about money, people clam up because there's some insecurities around it. Am I making enough? Am I spending it the quote unquote right way? And financial wellness just says, I'm comfortable with where I am. I'm happy with what I have. And that is a sense of freedom that I want to help, particularly people of color, particularly African Americans. I want us to be able to have that ability to have that financial freedom, that financial wellness.
Yeah, beautiful. So now let's dive into the book, right? So you've sort of already talked about the few different aspects when it comes to just living a healthy life. What was your inspiration behind this book?
I actually had the idea to write that book about over 10 years ago, and it took me time because I needed time for it to flush out. But what inspired me to write this book was just kind of thinking about, what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be free? And I start really looking back at my life. So when you read the book, it really is just stories about my life and a lot of the mistakes that I made, because I think that's how we learn. We learn through mistakes. If you get an A on the exam, you're not going to go back and go, let me make sure I understand that. You're moving on to the next thing. You get a C on that exam, you're going back and you want to study and understand it more. So we learn through our mistakes. And that's what the book is about. What really inspired me to write the book was my children. I absolutely love my children, and I want them to be able to have something that I can give something that they have that they could keep for eternity, for the rest of their lives, and be able to go back and kind of say, yeah, my dad was a little eclectic. He was a little oddball, but we love him for who he is. And so, like I said, the book covers physical, spiritual, as well as financial, because that's the component. And, I think about my life and my life journey. You know, I didn't come from money. I thought I was middle class, but as you learn more, I was like, wait a second, I don't think we were really middle class. But I thought I was middle class because my mom made sure that we had things that we wanted. But I just didn't understand how she was making that happen. But, we grew up in Section 8 housing. For me, I'll tell you a story. I was looking at a magazine when I was in high school, and I saw a new car coming out, and it was a Lexus. And I'm looking at the Lexus, and I was like, wow, that is a nice car. And I said to myself, without even skipping a beat, I'll never have one of those cars, because I didn't know anyone that had one of those cars, right? I was living in a limited mindset. And that just was our life. We grew up in apartments, and so it was the exposure to other people and having these experiences that brought me to the point of saying, no, I want to own a home. No, I want to not just own one home, several homes. I want to start to build my investment portfolio. And those are conversations. Those are conversations that were not being had around our dinner table. And so, and as I'm growing into this, I also want to bring people along with me. No man is an island. We do it as a team. And I want everybody on my team to be eating, right? I want all my family members to be balling out of control. So I get the knowledge and I share it. And not just my family, but my community. I want my community to be balling out of control. And so I get the knowledge and I want to share it. And so, I'm thankful that I was able to take life and just condense it to 6 simple strategies is what I call it. 6 simple strategies.
I wouldn't call it simple. I'll call it 6 amazing strategies, because, man, when I read these strategies, I was like, wow, these are what I like most about the strategies. They're concise, right?
Yeah.
Just like you call them, simple. They're concise, straight to the point. It's very, very easy to implement. And so these...
Well, it's not easy to implement, easy to understand.
Easy to understand.
I'd
correct.
say pretty difficult to implement.
Implement, yes. Which is something you talk about in the book in terms of implementing these strategies, right? And so thinking of these strategies from a big picture perspective, could you walk us through all of them? However you feel you want to, because, and the reason why I say all of them is I was kind of thinking about all 6 strategies, and I said to myself, man, the one that sticks out to me the most is consistency. However, I could have a listener that might care more about the spirituality aspect. And sort of just like I was telling you before we started recording, when I sat down to write my values, not too long ago, one of them was relationships, but one of them that was above relationships was spirituality. And so spirituality means a lot to me. Education is also one of these strategies, which really means a lot to me. So I couldn't figure out which one to ask you to dive into. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to frame the question in a way that you talk about all 6 strategies, so anyone that's listening can benefit from whichever one resonates with them the most.
Yeah, let's talk about them. The first one is do it first. So whatever it is that's most important to you, that's what you should do. Financially, what that means is the most important person to pay is pay myself first. So I have 401ks, I have other brokerage accounts, and as soon as that check comes in, the direct deposit, immediately some of that money's going out, because that's the most important thing. And if I don't have enough money afterwards to pay my cable bill or my PG&E bill or my gym membership, we'll sort that out. But that's not more important than paying myself first. So do it first. And we can talk about that spiritually as well as physically. The second one is forgive yourself. From a financial perspective, that means getting out of debt. We have a huge debt problem in this country. We just watched the U.S. government raise the debt ceiling. So instead of saying, how can we live within our means, they said, let's just expand our means. And there's implications to that for us as people living here in the United States in terms of what's going to happen to our the price we're paying for food and gas and everything else. But forgiving yourself is about coming to a realization of this is why I'm in the debt that I'm in, and how I got into that debt, and then making a plan to pay it off. But until you are honest about yourself in terms of why I got into that debt, you can't forgive yourself. You're kind of holding on to your past as long as you continue to let that kind of just sit there. The third one is be consistent, which we talked about. And consistency is so important. Financially, it's about contributing on a consistent basis. It's called dollar cost averaging is a term that they use. But that's about investing, but even paying off debt, you have to be consistent about it. A lot of people start things and they don't finish it. From a physical perspective, we talk about diets. You start a diet and then you're excited about it and then it just goes away. But we have to find consistency. And the way you're consistent is you have to align your actions with your values. I love that you said that you wrote down what your values are, because everything that I'm doing, I have to do it because it serves a purpose. If it doesn't serve a purpose, I'm not going to be consistent with it. I'm not going to do it. The fourth one is reducing distractions. And financially, what that means is now that you know what your values are, you can't allow yourself to just deviate from that. And that happens all the time. Distractions is everything that we're seeing in terms of marketing. Marketing used to be when you're watching TV and then we have these 30-second commercials, 25-second commercials that come on. Now, marketing is so embedded in everything that we do. It's on our social media feeds. It's on TV. It's on the radio. Even when we pay for radio, you got to listen to 2 minutes of
the train station.
It's on the train. It's everywhere, right? And all those things are our distractions. And we're going to fall into them. So I didn't say eliminate distractions. I said reduce them, right? So understand, why is it that I really want this new pair of shoes? Why is it that I really want this jacket? And being realistic and saying, okay, I've already bought a jacket last week. I don't need to buy another jacket this week. So it's about reducing distractions. Then we have start small and gradually increase. And I love this one because a lot of times people say, I'm not going to start until I have at least this much money. I don't want to start a family until I have this. I don't want to begin my exercise regime until I lose 10, right? And starting small means let's just get started, right? Even if you can only contribute $25 a month, start at $25 a month. And then you start to build on that from 25 to 35 to 50. But you start small and you gradually increase. Not your dreams. Your dreams are always big. I always dream big, but I know that it starts small. I have to take that big goal and break it down into something. And then the sixth one is to educate yourself. And, from a financial perspective, you have to become hungry for this information. And you've got to seek this information out from multiple sources. And what you'll find is when you start to listen to multiple sources, and I'd say reputable sources, that you're going to start to see a consistent thread that's kind of coming through everything. And everyone's just saying it differently because we're speaking to a different audience. But, and it's not just 30-second clips on Instagram or YouTube. It's not 10-minute videos. I'm talking about reading books. I'm talking about reading articles and that are in the newspaper and in magazines, and going to conferences, getting certificates, but really starting to educate yourself on things from a spiritual perspective. When I started really getting into being a teacher, a minister, I needed to step back and say, let me understand how the Bible was formed, right? Because it was formed by man's hands. And so I took a class at Harvard, an online class at Harvard that talked about the origins of the Bible, because I'm educating myself on all the other aspects of it. And so that's critically important. And if you just think about those 6 things, you can apply that to our physical, our spiritual, and to our financial self. And then that's when we become whole.
Yeah. Wow. That was pretty good. That was amazing. I feel like I literally just took 6 classes and just one whole conversation. But so just to unpack a little bit of all that you've mentioned, going back to paying yourself first. As I was getting ready for this episode, one of your videos that I saw on YouTube talks about the Bell bucket approach. Could you walk us through that?
Oh yeah, the Bell bucket approach. Let me tell you how it came about. Talk about being consistent. It's hard, and reducing distractions is hard. So what I was thinking through, and is how do we come up with a method where people don't have to think about it? It still requires you to do some actions, but you don't have to think about it. And so from that came an idea for an app and a way for people to automate what it is they want to do based off of what their goals are. And so if you think about five buckets, the first bucket is called the PASS, PASS bucket. And that's where you all of your income goes through. And all your income is going to go into one of 4 things for everyone. It's either going to go toward your current expenses, how you're living now, what I call the present bucket. How do you want to live? Paying for those things like your rent, your entertainment, your food, living your best life. For some of us, we have a past bucket, PAST. That's getting out of debt. Getting out of debt is extremely important. I don't want to work for anybody. I want to work for myself. And as long as I have a mortgage or a car note or student loans, I don't have the ability to say, I quit. That's financial freedom. I don't want to do that anymore. Or I don't want to do that much of that anymore. But if I have bills to pay, I don't have that freedom. So allocating some of that money to the past, getting out of debt. And then I have then the the fourth bucket is the near future bucket. That's your savings. And you're saving for your emergency fund, which I know you guys talked about on this podcast before, but also saving for those things that you want to do. A lot of people have these amazing vacations and it all goes on their credit card. And then they're going to spend the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months paying that off. Okay. And I want us to be in a position where we know what's coming up in the next 3 months. We're going on this amazing vacation. So let's start saving for it. That's called a near future goal. So you're saving that money. And then I have the fifth and final bucket is the distant future bucket, where what you're doing there is you're investing. So I have goals that are longer term in nature, that are 5 years out, 7 years out. I want to own a home. I want to retire. So those type of goals. And the reason why you're investing that is because you're able to take on a greater risk. Investing involves risks, and you're going to lose money. I think almost everyone that was invested in 2021, we made a lot of money. It was good times.
It was raining.
And then in 2022, we lost a lot of money. It was bad times.
Yeah.
But that's the cyclical nature of the stock market. So if I'm trying to save up money to go on a trip next year, I don't want that money to be subject to the market and the risks. And so I'm going to put it into a savings account or a high yield savings account or a CD, something that's not going to earn as much in terms of interest and growth, but I know I'm preserving the capital. Where for something that I'm thinking 7 years out, 10 years out, my retirement, 15, 20 years out, let it ride. Yeah, 21 was great. 2020 sucked. 21 was great.
Yep.
22 wasn't so good either.
Yeah.
But all that didn't matter because I don't need that money for another 15 years. And I understand that the stock market on average grows at 7% a year. And so that's what I'm investing for.
Yeah, that time in the market does the magic.
That does the magic.
Yeah, and yes, I agree. Man, 2022 was fantastic. I was just telling one of my coworkers.
21 was fantastic.
21, actually, yeah. So 21, because I think 20 started the COVID.
Yes.
And so things tanked, but then everything skyrocketed. And so I was telling one of my coworkers, I was like, man, I feel like a genius. I was looking, I was like, man, I'm so good at this, right? And then come 2022, I'm like, oh, man, what happened to all the money that I just had, But now it's starting to recover.
It is.
I didn't make any moves. I didn't need to, like to your point,
Yeah.
right? Because once you understand the goal, you're able to manage those distractions that come our way. And so speaking of distractions, that brings me back because, when you're talking about the 6 strategies, you did mention distractions. And you're right. Distractions can sometimes derail us from our goals in so many different ways. And so not too long ago, I was doing a LinkedIn learning. I love LinkedIn learnings, by the way. And one thing that the person that was given the lecture was talking about is he used a term or an acronym called SBO, which stands for shiny bright objects.
Okay.
And what these shiny bright objects do is on your way to your goal, and it's sort of something that you talk about in your book, right? When you're heading to work, you see all these exit signs and all these unnecessary signs that does not have anything to do with your final destination.
Right.
And so this guy on the LinkedIn Learning talks about the shiny bright objects, and what shiny bright objects do is they attract you, right? Because they're shiny, they're bright. Once you see them, you're like, oh my God, this is like the newest thing. Let me get on top of it. You could apply that to investing even, right? You could have
Absolutely.
a strategy. You could call yourself maybe a value investor. I don't know, just an example here. And all of a sudden, there's the newest stock in town. If you were to stick to your values, that stock might not fit you as a value investor, but because it's the shiny, bright object, you just hop onto it. And so distractions become very, very important in terms of managing them. In your own way, how do you go about managing distractions, especially for us young adults right now? You even attested in your book, we have so many distractions.
Yeah.
You just talked about it right now, right? Whether it's the cell phone, whether it's the notifications that are popping up, whether it's your friend that's calling you to come out this weekend, but you got to do that homework. How have you managed distractions to be able to be successful at this point in your career?
So I would say 2 things. One is I'm clear on my goal. And so, Bitcoin was a big thing back in 2018, 2019. And a lot people said they were making a lot of money on Bitcoin. That's what they said. They're making a lot of money on Bitcoin. And I was just watching people or listening to the stories and going, man, I'm only making 3%, 4% in the stock market. This is not good. But I understand what my goal is. So I put it this way. If I were to invest in Bitcoin and I double my money, I go from 10,000 to 20,000. What am I going to do with that additional 10,000? I don't have anything else to do with that. I don't need another car. I don't need another house. I don't have any room for any more clothes. I get rid of some clothes and buy some. But what am I really going to do, and how does that align with what's important in my life? And so when you're investing, people say, what should I invest in? My question always back to them is, what's your goal? Because if your goal is I need to invest some money so I can make a 20% return so that I can go on this trip next year, I'm going to say, I don't know. Because if I knew, I would be investing in it. I don't know how to make a 20% return. But if your goal is retirement, just start investing in the S&P 500 and move on. And so that's one way that I manage distractions, is keeping track of my goal and not just answering the first question, but the second question, and then what? I love that question, and then what? Well, I'm going to make an extra $10,000. And then what? I'm going to use that to pay off debt. And then what? Right? And ultimately getting to what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And the other way that I manage distractions is I allow for them. So I get it. I grew up I'm an American. I grew up in America. I'm a Black American. And so flossing is always going to be part of who I am. I can't get away from it. And so I have to be able to allow for some silly mistakes. I budget. Every month I sit down, I do a budget. And I have a line item in my budget, whatever can I tell you what it is?
Yeah, of course.
Whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, of course.
And that is my money to just spend on stupid stuff, okay? And not feel guilty about it. And so now sometimes I want to push that down, and sometimes I don't spend it all, so I roll it over to the next month. But that's when I can just go to the mall and just not feel guilty about spending money. Or like normal people, I have a bad day and I need some shopping therapy. Okay, well, that's part of my budget. So I allow for distractions to happen because I'm realistic about who I am, how I grew up, and where I live in the environment that I live in.
Yeah. Wow. That's really good, because I think in one of my episodes that's actually coming up, I speak to a certified financial planner. And one of the things we talk about is goal-based investing. And goal-based investing, it's not a new concept, but it's basically what you're talking about, understanding your goal and investing towards that goal. Because, yeah, you just stay away from all these distractions. Stock market, there's Bitcoin, there's IPOs, there's stock splits. There's the news, there's the new electric car. There's always something new to get involved in. But when you're really focused on that goal, that can really help you. Another thing that I'll talk about also is you speak about, allowing those distractions. I think that's something that I struggle with because, much like you, I didn't come from money. And so I have this fear that I may lose the money, right? I don't want to ever have to go to my mom and ask my mom, hey, can I borrow $100, or maybe can you help me pay this bill? I have that fear. And so because of that, I'm always trying to be on my P's and Q's when it comes to my finances, And even on my episode with the certified financial planner, Jill, I did mention that because that's a fear that I feel like could hold me back. I'm really working on trying to re-engineer my mind in terms of I don't want to have a scarcity mindset. Just like I mentioned, you can't build wealth from a scarcity mindset. But I think helping myself to understand, that's part of where I grew up, but I'm in a different place now, and not feel guilty when I'm enjoying the fruit of my labor. I think that's something that I'm still working on. And so thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and it's also about having, you're welcome, and it's also about having savings, right? So you put enough money away in savings, and that's your priority. So now once I feel kind of secure, and maybe I'm not all the way where I want to be, but I'm close enough to my target that I can say, you know what, let me bump up this do whatever I want account, so that I know, like I go in the store knowing I'm going to waste this much money. That's my goal, is to waste this much money. And so for me, I love buying things, but the way I set my life up is I only have enough closet space for 20 shirts or whatever the number is. And so if I buy a new shirt, now when I go in and look at a store, I go, okay, if I buy these 2 shirts, I got to get rid of 2 shirts. And I don't. I get rid of 1 because they're all so great. I don't know. But I challenge myself. Okay, you bought something in new. Now you have to give something away. And what you're doing there is you're operating in the spirit of giving, which is another way to bring wealth back to you, is taking what you have and being able to give that to someone. So I'm happy, I'm giving something to someone else that's making them happy, and so the cycle of life can continue.
Yeah, Absolutely. I agree. So another thing that you talked about is dream big, which I think it's huge. You talk about it in your book as well. And when I think of the wealth gap right now, specifically for, Black people and African Americans, huge. And maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, but maybe if we dream big, somehow we would be able to close that wealth gap. Because maybe part of it is we're not thinking big enough, right? We're not looking to own our own accounting firms. We're not looking to take those big, audacious goals and attack it, right? And be consistent with them. Do you think that's a good theory? How am I thinking about this the right way?
You are, absolutely. We do have to dream big, and then we have to take those dreams and turn them into actionable items. Take those dreams, turn them into goals, and then take those goals and turn them into action. I know a lot of people that have a lot of big dreams, but they haven't got their AA degree. And I'm not saying college education is the way to go. I know I'm a college professor, but I know that's not the way to go. But I also believe that you can do multiple things at the same time. You can be building your business while also taking an entrepreneurship class at a community college. And so you have to start setting goals, right? And then you have to start taking action steps toward those goals to do that. What we're talking about here, dreaming big, closing the wealth gap, absolutely. I'm 100% on board. Let's do that. How do we do that? Podcasts like this. The ability for two Black men to sit down, have a conversation, speaking to our community, our people about educating. Like, how do we continue to educate ourselves? And put this in your arsenal, take other podcasts, put that in your arsenal, and then figure out what works out best for you. Those are little steps that are going to make a huge difference is by toward closing that wealth gap. So I am dreaming big. All my dreams are big. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I don't think I could have got through the podcast without acknowledging that. And so I love the fantasy of it all, and I have a huge imagination. And so in my mind, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. It's just a matter of how are we going to go about achieving that, and what can I do in my lifetime to be impactful, to make a difference.
Absolutely, man. I love that. And Black wealth is actually huge in America. So if someone is being limited about dreaming big, maybe they're thinking, we've always been disenfranchised, that we don't get the opportunities. There's all these roadblocks, right? Speaking of distractions, right? There's your educational roadblocks, there's the gender roadblocks, there's the race roadblocks. All of these they're always going to be there, right? Yeah. And so I love that you talk about imagination, because when you're using that imagination, you want to not limit yourself and know, and the history also helps, right? And back to your point about getting information from different sources, because if you're listening to this podcast, you might pick up some very current information. However, you could back that up with some history. I'm trying to talk about Black wealth right now. And historically, Black wealth is huge. There's a reason why I used to work at The Gap, and The Gap spent so much money during Black Friday. When I tell you, marketing would just go insane.
Yeah.
And I had to take a step back and ask myself, I was like, why do they do this? And it's not just The Gap. A lot of organizations do this. And it's very strategic. There's a reason why Adidas partnered with Kanye West. There's a reason why Adidas specifically partnered with Beyonce. I worked at Adidas also. I saw all these things. And I started to ask myself, why did they partner with Pharrell? All these very strategic Black people that have strategic connections to the Black community. Because when we use our imagination, which these firms are literally doing, what they're doing is using their imagination. Back to your point with marketing, put that together, and we got you to spend some money. And the brands continue to grow. And so, speaking of Black wealth and dreaming big, wanted to put this on and say, there's opportunity out there. Don't limit yourself. Keep your eyes open and just keep striving. That consistency that we've talked about many, many times. I think once you add that to the whole equation, you're going to be on your way to building that wealth.
Yeah, and also the thought about educating yourself. Let's call it what it is. There's systemic racism that exists. Yes, there's a lot of money coming into the Black community, and it's not circulating within our community. But that's not all our fault. It is more difficult for us to secure small business loans. It's more, if you look at neighborhoods and you look at where fast food restaurants are, and fast food restaurant, higher calorie count, lower nutritional value, but that's convenient, right? Very convenient. You don't see that in affluent neighborhoods, but you see that in our community. You see liquor stores in our community, and what happens when we live on chips and soda and burgers and fries, the unhealthiest of the burgers and fries. Well, now we have diseases, we have health. So now we got to spend that money that we should have been using saying, hey, I'm getting ready to travel across the world. I'm using that money to take care of grandma. I'm using that money to take care of myself and my diabetes issue. And so there's all these things that are being brought, all these forces going against us that's preventing us. But when you educate yourself, you look at these partnerships, the partnerships that McDonald's has with these artists, or the shoe companies, like you said, with Beyonce and Kanye, and you say, okay, why are they doing that, and what impact is that really going to have on me, right? Why do I need a pair of Yeezys? Who am I impressing? Let's just call it what it is. Who am I impressing? Right? You look at my shoe. I'm wearing Jordans right now. Okay, I'm wearing Jordans because I'm trying to impress somebody. Let's just call it what it is. Let's be honest, right? Because that's part of how we grew up, right? That's how we demonstrate our wealth, in a sense, is by what we wear and what we show. But I have to educate myself and understand that is a flawed thought in my system, and be mindful of it. And sometimes I give into it, and sometimes I'm strong enough to resist it.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm learning so much here. So another aspect of the 6 strategies that we've talked about that I kind of want to dive a little bit more into is the spirituality piece. Not too long ago, I found myself asking, how does building wealth relate to spirituality? Yeah. I was just asking myself that, and I came up with some answers, which I think I probably created an Instagram video or an Instagram reel on that. But in your perspective, how does spirituality relate to building wealth? Because I feel like even in the Bible, money is talked about, right?
It is, yeah.
However, it's just like you said, sometimes when we talk about money, we cringe. There's this behavior about money. One of my most recent guests was saying, you don't talk to your boys about money. You don't go to the bar or the pub and you start talking about money or your investments. These days, I think that trend is kind of changing because a lot of young people and a lot of people in general are starting to get involved. But in general, it's something that we don't really talk about. So there's this sort of cloud with talking about money and then spirituality, mixing it up with it. So how do you approach that space?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
It says in the Bible that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. And the way I understand that scripture is when you start to attain more and more money, you start to switch your focus on the money, and you start to switch your focus on all the things that I'm able to accomplish, and you start to rely less on God, who is the maker and the giver of all things. And so there has to be a balance. And so everything that I do, I always ask myself, why? And going back to the values, what is it that I value, right? Why do I want to be a millionaire? Why do I want to be, I don't want to be a billionaire because I don't want to work that hard. But why do I want to be a multi-millionaire? And it's so that I can give back, because giving is an expression of love. And so, one of the things I talked about being the chairman of the board for this nonprofit, when I go, all the work that I do for this nonprofit, I don't get paid for that. That's money that's an opportunity cost, because I could be working at a client or doing, teaching another class or doing something else to generate money. But I understand that part of my responsibility is giving back, right? And so the Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave. He loved it so much that he gave. Loved that you gave. Loved that you give. When you give, that is an expression of love. And I can't give if I don't have. If I'm struggling to make gas money, I can't treat you to dinner unless I'm putting it on my credit card. So let's stop fronting.
Yeah.
So it's that aspect that I think about it from, why? But I also understand that money has the ability to corrupt. And so that's why, for me, it's always a balance of how hard am I working, but not only what am I accumulating, but how am I giving back? And that's part of my own balanced scorecard, is making sure that I'm giving in my budget. In addition to, I pay my tithes, I give my offering, but I also have in my budget, just give money out. I will go on GoFundMe and go find someone that I don't know, a cause that I think is a good cause, and I just give some money. And I want to do that every month. I want to be more consistent. I want to do that every month, because for me, and not giving it to someone that I know who's in need, but just to a random person, that's a demonstration that I love, right? Because I'm giving.
Yeah. As Jay-Z will say, the purest form of giving is unanimous to unanimous. And, man, that was packed. So, yeah, spirituality and building wealth. Man, I love that scripture you used also, because I think it speaks a lot in terms of our goal with this podcast is to provide relevant information to people so they can be successful on the financial journey. And I think there's something bigger than attaining that financial freedom, which is kind of what you talk about with that analogy or that scripture that you use there. Because you're right. I think once, and it's this theory of we're sort of never satisfied, right? I know you don't want to be a billionaire, but I tell you, you start getting these, because you know how they say the hardest part is getting to that first 100,000. Mm-hmm. And then once you get to that 100,000, you're like, if I can make 100,000, I can make 500. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're not even trying to make $1 million, but that money just goes out and makes you $1 million, because that's just the way money works. If you have 500,000 invested, that 500,000 is going to grow quicker than if you had only 100,000 invested. Yeah. And so the money itself, it's going to do its thing, and then us as people are also going to do our thing, which is we're going to want more. There's always the next destination, right? For instance, when I travel and I go back to the East Coast, once I get to the airport, when I was on the plane, my destination was the airport. Once I get to the airport, there's a new destination. Yeah. I get home, that's the new destination. Once I get home, I'm like, all right, I got to go see my friend. So there's always that what's next, and then we just keep going. But I love that you add this scripture to it, because that keeps us grounded. And so if you're listening to this podcast right now, definitely something to think about, right? Financial wellness, spirituality. Man, I think putting those two together can put you in such a great place. And so,
and this too, Papa, I've come to realize, well, first of all, let me be clear. I do want a bigger house. I do want another car. I do want nicer clothes. But I also come to realize that bigger house is not going to make me happy. happier. That new car is not going to make me happier. I know that because I've tried that before. I thought as soon as I hit this goal, or as soon as I achieve this position at work, this amount in my savings account, then life's going to be easy. Guess what? Life never gets easy. It's just new challenges. I heard this quote, new levels, new devils, right?
Wow.
You just go from one problem to another problem. And so now that I understand that that's not going to be my happiness, I stop chasing that with that level of vigor and focus. And so when the new car comes, yeah, I'm going to take it. But I know that's not going to make me happier. That's just going to increase my insurance. That's going to, now I have to figure out somewhere to park it.
Yep.
It's just going to be different levels of frustration that come into play.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. So, wow, I think we're approaching an hour here. So
okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you see, I told you when the conversation gets good, you don't even realize it gets going. But I'm really enjoying this conversation. So, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is the education piece. So you mentioned how you took a course at Harvard recently to learn more about the Bible, the origin of the Bible. That's so inspirational because coming from, a college professor like you, someone might think, you're already a professor, you're already giving out the information, you're already an authority, so what's the point, right? And so what inspires you to keep learning and, investing, especially in your education? Because I know Harvard courses are not cheap. I recently took one and man, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, but I know it's a commitment. Like you have a goal, which is going to be a big goal, whether it's a big goal such as always investing in yourself, getting to the next level before you do that. But in your case, you're already an authority figure. So what inspires you to keep, learning and educating yourself?
I want to be the greatest. I want to be in the Hall of Fame. And so in order to be the greatest, regardless how good you are, you have to keep practicing. You have to keep learning, and how do I get better? You look at some of the greatest basketball players, Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. As great as they were still in the gym saying, how do I improve this aspect of my game? And so, yeah, I got some aspects of my game that I'm good at, but there are other things that I want to improve. I look at other people and I go, that's a skill set I want to attain. So how do I go about attaining it? And the question's always why? Like, why do I want to attain that? But I want to be the greatest. And so the only way you get there is you gotta keep your ear to the street. You gotta understand what's going on in the world. I started reading like world news. I want to understand what's going on in Africa. I want to understand what's going on in South America, and I want to hear from different news outlets, not just from one news outlet, because I want to be able to hear things and see things and say, okay, but what's the story behind the story? What should I know that they're not going to tell me? And so that's my motivation, and I enjoy it. I'm blessed. I'm really blessed financially, where I feel like teaching for me is a hobby that I just get paid for, and a lot of things that I do, I just do it as a hobby, and people pay me for it, but I do it for fun, and so I'm at this point in my life just trying to enjoy my life.
Yeah, which you're doing so gracefully. So that's lovely, man. So speaking of that education piece, right? Kind of want to shift into social media a little bit. And so if you're scrolling through social media, Instagram, TikTok, there's a lot of education going on there also. What's your take on getting education from there as well?
I'm an old man. I don't have social media. I have a LinkedIn page. I don't have social media because I'm trying to reduce distractions. And so I acknowledge that that is not the smartest decision. You can be a casual drinker and not be an alcoholic. You can be a casual user of social media and not become addicted to it. But I also know who I am, and I know my flaws. And so if that was always on my mind, or always I'm getting updates if this is what's going on, that's going to distract me from doing other things that I value and that's important. So I don't have social media.
Yeah. Wow. That's something a lot of young people can learn from you, because at one point I didn't have social media, but of course when I started the podcast, I was like, all right, there's no way there's no way you make this thing successful the way you want to make it successful and not use social media. And so I hopped on, and you're right, it's a huge distraction. Even when sometimes because the way it works is maybe I'm doing work and I'm like, all right, let me try to find some new ideas. Let me try to find some inspiration. But you just end up somewhere else. And you're like, oh, let me go back. But you just spent 25 minutes, 2 hours, which sometimes I don't have a lot of time blocks to be able to do these things. And so when I get distracted like that and I have to pull myself back, I'm just like, So I definitely feel that.
And you're also right that it limits your success. If I'm not on social media, so this book is not selling as many copies as it can. My YouTube channel is not doing as well as it should, because I'm not doing those things on Instagram and TikTok to push the channel. But again, I understand that, and I'm willing to me, for me, the additional distractions, the additional risks of kind of potential risk of being in social media is not worth the additional success that's going to come along with it.
Yeah. And well, because the reason why I brought that up actually is I feel there's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of you just get bombarded with so much information on social media. And I think it turns people into passive learners, if that's even a thing, which I really think it is.
It is.
Because you're just casually watching these videos. Sometimes there's a lot of good information in the video, but because you're ready to just scroll to the next one, you don't really retain any of that information. And that's something that I start to think about, because sometimes I hop on there and I can find out about the newest app, and I'm like, wow, this AI app is actually insane. And I just get stuck on the app. I don't end up going back on Instagram or wherever I found out about the app on,
Yeah.
And so that's the main reason why I brought it up, because I think the passive learning aspect could be troublesome, because you're spending so much time, you think you're learning something, but what you're really doing is you're just passively just running through these information. And one thing that you talk about in the book is learning from reputable sources, whether it's authorities, whether it's schools, whether it's actually reading books, right? Because I think that's a little different from passive learning.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And it's going to be more and more challenging. Someone sent me a video, I think it was on one of the social media channels, of someone who wrote a song and then put it in Kanye West's voice, and he walked you through the whole thing in the video, and then you hear Kanye's voice. And so when you talk about a reputable source, right? My pastor, or maybe some government officials, reputable sources. If I'm not sitting face to face, I know you're real because I'm staring at you. But if I get a video, or I can get a voicemail, and someone can replicate your voice, right? And so now, how reputable is that? So this whole distance thing, I'm so glad that we agreed to not do this over Zoom, but come in and be in person. Again, seeing things with that third eye. Why are they asking us or saying, don't worry, you don't have to come into work. Don't worry, we can do this all remotely. We're losing this ability to decipher the gut that says this is a good person. This person has has a reputation that I can believe in. And so that's the challenge with AI. But now we're going down a whole different path.
Yeah. Man, Erick Bell, man, I feel so fortunate to be talking to you right now, honestly. And so one thing that I love to ask all of my guests on every episode is, what is your definition of wealth?
So my definition of wealth is legacy. Not what I'm able to accumulate in my lifetime, but what am I leaving to my children? And can I do enough that I'm not only leaving it to my children, but it's going to their grandchildren? One of the biggest issues with the lack of black wealth is because we're starting at a negative. Your mom didn't have anything to give to you to say, hey, I'm gonna let you start your college. I'm gonna let you start college debt free. So now you have your college degree and you have zero debt. You come into this with debt. I came into this with debt. So I'm already starting at a negative. And so to me, real wealth is not what you see. Real wealth is what can you pass on to future generations, and not just to your kids, because I not just financially, I should say, but what can you pass on to your community? What can you leave in your community? I have this saying, always leave a room better than you found it. And it started because, my lovely kids, or all kids, are messy. And so I said, when you walk into a room, leave it better than you found it. Go find a piece of paper, something on the ground that you can pick up, throw in the garbage, and now you can hold your head high and say, that room is a better place because I came in there. It's cleaner because I was in there. Well, let's expand that to talk about the room environment. Like, how can I come into a classroom and make it better by saying a kind word to someone or encouraging someone? What can we do in our community to leave it at a better place? Taking care of your house that you live in or the apartment that you're living in, sweeping in front of your house, right? What can I do to make it better? That is, to me, that's wealth.
Yeah. Wow. Very impactful, man. You're a man of so much wisdom, so much insight. I remember when I listened to your speech, actually, one of the things that you talked about was black wealth and how being young, gifted, and black was something to be proud of. And you spoke about how sometimes, because of imposter syndrome, we don't accept ourselves for who we are. We try to be something else than what we're supposed to be. But we're supposed to remember that we're young, gifted, and black always. And that resonated with me, and it still does. And so thanks for sharing your definition of wealth as well. So packed. I love it. So let me take a pause here and ask you, is there anything you wanted to share today that I haven't had the chance to ask you about?
I think we covered it all. There is the Millionaire Pyramid, but I'll let people go to YouTube. Erick Bell, CPA. They can look that up and get the Millionaire Pyramid. How to become a millionaire. And I'm a teacher, and so to me, everything comes down to simple concepts. And again, that's another simple concept. If you want to become a millionaire, you just do these steps.
Yeah. And speaking of the YouTube, actually, I did watch a couple of your videos up there, and it's very educational. I think it's well structured. So if you're listening to me right now on this podcast, definitely check out the YouTube channel. When I say it's well structured, I mean it's very illustrative. That's what I mean. So when you're watching the video, you're really engaged because you use a lot of illustrations. Even when you're talking about the bell bucket approach, I love how you illustrate the buckets, and you have the pass bucket at the top, and then the remaining buckets in the bottom, and you walk through that so well. And so,
thank you.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast right now, Erick Bell's YouTube channel, very, very informative, especially that one that I didn't talk about, which is the Millionaire pyramid. I had it literally at the top of my notes, and I'm surprised I didn't talk about that. And so, but you can definitely watch that video, and in the show links, I'll be sure to add links for the book, Living Healthy: 6 Simple Strategies to Achieve a Healthy Life, physically, spiritually, and financially. This book is a game changer. You should definitely listen to. Definitely read the book. I got access to the book also on Kindle. So, some of you might not like hard copy books. I love hard copy books. There's nothing better than being on the plane or somewhere where maybe you don't have service or you don't even want to be on your phone. You can just dive into the book. And so, but I also got it on Kindle. So just something to mention there. But Professor Erick Bell, man, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
We're just talking.
Yeah, we just vibing. We just vibing. Man, any final words for my listeners before we wrap this up?
I would say you can do it. It takes time. It takes discipline. But when you think beyond yourself and you grasp hold to something that's to a goal that's more than just yourself, it becomes easy to achieve.
That's it. I don't have anything to add to that. And that's the mic drop right there. Man, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My man. Thank you for doing this, man. This was great.
That was fun.
Oh, that was awesome.